Thank you.
The man knew that if he laid a hand on the woman, he'd definitely be labeled a pervert. So, he decided to search her bag instead, but came up empty. Realizing he had misunderstood, he quickly apologized, hoping for a chance to make it up to her. But the woman said nothing, turned around, and walked away with a sly smile on her face. Her name was Chunja, a professional con artist. Earlier that day, Chunja had her eyes on an expensive necklace at a jewelry store. With a gleeful grin, she placed it around her neck. But the moment she noticed the clerk's gaze drifting, she pointed to another necklace behind her, asking to try that one on. The second the clerk turned around, Chunja swiftly removed the necklace she had been wearing and swapped it for a fake one she pulled from her chest. Just as she thought she got away with it, a police officer appeared behind her. Sensing the danger, Chunja tried to run, but another cop blocked her path. It turned out the clerk and the police had set up a trap to catch her red-handed. However, Chunja wasn't so easy to outsmart. She quickly began plotting her next escape.
이거는 틈만 남 도망이야 아주.
Soon after, the con artist was hauled into a police car, and as the clerk thanked the officers for their help, they drove off with her. But just a few miles down the road, one of the cops pulled out the very necklace Chunja had stolen.
잘했어 이 씹새끼야.
In reality, Chunja was in cahoots with the two fake officers. They had been targeting that valuable necklace all along, using Chunja's charm to pull off a classic bait-and switch on the unsuspecting clerk. The trio was fearless, thanks to the protection of a powerful ally, a prosecutor named Park Hee-soo, a man with an insatiable hunger for power, to help cover up the truth about the bribes involved in Jang Do-cheol's fraud case. Park Hee-soo pulled Chunja and her two accomplices out of prison. His plan was to have them track down a list of high-ranking officials who had accepted bribes. A list Jang Do-cheol had likely left behind when he fled the country. This list had most likely fallen into the hands of Jang Do-cheol's trusted assistant, Lee Kon-suk. The team began tracking Lee, discovering that he had recently conned a wealthy elderly man. Park Hee-soo then arrested Lee Kon-suk on fraud charges. However, during the interrogation, Lee Kon-suk flatly denied the charges, claiming that he was actually the one scammed by an elderly man named Choi Kon-sik, who had swindled him out of 10 billion won. Lee explained that he had targeted the old man as an easy mark, thinking he'd make a quick fortune, but instead, he was the one who got played. Suspicious, Park Hee-soo pulled the surveillance footage of the alleged scam and found that the old man was actually a young guy wearing a disguise. As soon as Suk-dong saw the man's face, he realized it was the very same person who had landed him in jail. To make matters worse, after Lee's arrest, this young man had broken into his house, likely searching for the bribery list. Fearing that the situation had spiraled out of control, Park Hee-soo ordered his men to track down the guy's car and find his hideout. But when they arrived, the place was already empty. Fortunately, Hwang Ji-sun didn't get far before Park Hee-soo, backed by advanced technology, quickly caught up to him. However, the young man refused to step out of his car for inspection. Forced to act, Park Hee-soo rammed the car to a stop and took him to a secret location for interrogation. Hwang Ji-sun revealed that his real motive for getting close to Lee Kon-suk was to lure Jang Do-cheol, who had fled the country. Out of hiding, he wanted revenge for his father, who had died as a result of Jang Do-cheol's fraud. Hwang claimed he had been chasing Jang Do-cheol for 8 years, tracking him all the way to Thailand. Although he had tracked down Jang Do-cheol's whereabouts, he lacked the strength to confront him directly. Therefore, his plan was to use Lee Kon-suk to force Jang Do-cheol to return to the country. Though Hwang Ji-sun's story sounded convincing, Park Hee-soo didn't trust anything coming from the mouth of a con artist. However, at a high-level gathering that day, several officials were furious with Park Hee-soo for how he was handling the bribery list. Their passive-aggressive remarks and veiled threats about his career left him fuming. Enraged, Park Hee-soo returned to the secret base and dragged Hwang Ji-sun to the rooftop, demanding to know why he was so obsessed with finding Jang Do-cheol.
네 아버지가 죽었어도 그런 개소리가 나올 것 같아.
Upon hearing this, Park Hee-soo gave a twisted smile, then threw Hwang Ji-sun to the ground. And so, the two men, despite their differences, formed a temporary alliance with a shared goal. But to make Jang Do-cheol show himself, they needed a clever plan through Lee Kon-suk. Hwang Ji-sun then punched Suk-dong in the face, giving Park Hee-soo an excuse to send both of them to the same detention center where Lee Kon-suk was held. While there, they intentionally talked about money in front of Lee. immediately catching his interest. Convinced that Hwang Ji-sung was a wealthy businessman, Lee Kang-suk discreetly followed him after his release. When the two entered a casino, Lee created an opportunity for a chance encounter. Seeing that the bait had been taken, Hwang Ji-sung led Lee to a fake company that had been set up in advance, with Chunja posing as the secretary answering the phones. Hired employees played their parts perfectly, creating an atmosphere that completely fooled Lee Kang-suk. Feeling confident, Lee then turned to Hwang Ji-sung and said,
얼마 전에 미국에 계시던 아버님이 돌아가셨어요. 돌아가시면서 그 상속금을 좀 물려주신 게 있는데.
지가 당했던 수법이잖아.
투자할 때가.
Seeing that Lee Kang-suk was interested in investing, Hwang Ji-sung told him that his casino was running a money laundering operation. He promised that with a 10 billion won investment, Lee could make a return of 800 million within 6 months. The high return instantly tempted Lee Kang-suk, and he began frantically calling around for funds. However, no one was willing to lend him money. Desperate, he dialed an overseas number, and the voice on the other end belonged to none other than Jang Do-cheol. Soon, a man named Kwok Sung-gun met with Lee Kang-suk. A background check revealed that Kwok was a businessman who only dealt in clean money. Sensing an opportunity, Hwang Ji-sung brought him to his casino to showcase his wealth and influence. But Kwok Sung-gun was no ordinary businessman. On the day they were about to sign the contract, Kwok Sung-gun unexpectedly turned to Hwang Ji-sung and said,
딱 속기 좋게 만들어놨네요. 무슨 문제라도 있습니까? 누가 이런 조건을 처음 보는 사람한테 넘기나? 직접 운영하면 노다진다, 안 그래요?
제가 운영까지 한다는 건 욕심이죠. 전 돈 세탁만 합니다.
그러니까 이상하다고요. 잘못되면 법적 책임 우리한테 다 떠넘기겠다는 거 아닙니까?
It was clear he wasn't genuinely interested in the deal. He had returned to Korea with another agenda. To get to the bottom of Kwok's real intentions, Hwang Ji-sung enlisted Chunja to seduce Kwok, which led to the scene at the beginning of the story. As part of their plan, Kwok Sung-gun apologized and invited Chunja to a bar for drinks. While he went to the restroom, Chunja swiped his hotel keycard and passed it to her teammates, then did everything she could to keep Kwok distracted, giving her team enough time to plant listening devices in his room. Unfortunately, her team was slow, and by the time they finished, Chunja was already drunk. The next morning, she woke up in Kwok Sung-gun's bedroom. Quietly, she tiptoed to the living room and quickly installed spyware on his phone. With that done, the next step was to find a way to make Kwok Sung-gun contact Jang Do-cheol. That night, Chunja returned to Kwok's house, bringing more alcohol to set up a romantic atmosphere.
그럼 내가 매력이 없어요?
넘칩니다.
내가 여자로 안 보여요? 아, 답답해. 남자가 이렇게 손도 올리고.
While they were drinking, a news report appeared on TV about Jang Do-cheol being spotted in Thailand. Kwok Sung-gun immediately panicked and rushed to his bedroom to report the situation to his boss. But what he heard on the other end shocked him.
됐고, 니 잠깐만 나온나? 마침 지나는 길이다.
네, 지난번 거기로 가겠습니다.
뭐야? 한국이야?
Park Hee-soo, meanwhile, was astonished to learn that Jang Do-cheol was returning to Korea. He ordered Chunja to monitor Kwok and Jang's meeting at Namsan Tower in Seoul, while he raced to catch them. Unfortunately, Park arrived too late and could only watch as Jang Do-cheol slipped away once again. Although the elusive con man escaped, the surveillance revealed that Kwok Sung-gun was planning to meet Jang at Incheon on Sunday. Park quickly set up a capture plan, but just then, he received a call from one of his men with alarming news. Hwang Ji-sung had secretly contacted a journalist who was investigating the fraud case, trying to gather information on those tied to the bribery list. Even more shocking, they discovered that Hwang Ji-sung's father wasn't a victim of Jang Do-cheol's fraud. He had actually helped Jang by forging a fake passport and aiding in his escape from the country. Hearing this, everything suddenly became clear to Park Hee-soo. It turned out that the man who had been ordered by the elites to be silenced all those years ago was none other than Hwang Ji-sung's father. Realizing that Hwang Ji-sung was desperate for revenge, Park Hee-soo decided to use this to his advantage. He handed Hwang Ji-sung a gun, instructing him to kill Jang Do-cheol during the next day's operation. At the same time, he gave Suk-dong another gun, ordering him to eliminate Hwang Ji-sung once Jang Do-cheol was dead. On the day of the operation, Kwok Sung-gun arrived at a pre-arranged Chinese restaurant. When Hwang Ji-sung saw Kwok Sung-gun heading to the basement, he asked Chunja to help create an opportunity for him. With her help, Hwang Ji-sung and Suk-dong snuck into the secret basement. Just as they were about to make their move, Park Hee-soo received new intel. Jang Do-cheol's real reason for returning to Korea was to convert 300 billion won in promissory notes into cash and take it back to Thailand. The massive amount of money immediately tempted Park Hee-soo. He ordered the two to halt the operation and return to the command center to wait for the next step.
돈부터 먹는다.
When Park Hee-soo revealed that he wanted to take both the money and the revenge, Hwang Ji-sung burst out laughing, declaring that he only wanted Jang Do-cheol's life and wasn't interested in the 300 billion won.
뇌물 리스트 필요 없어?
Hwang Ji-sung then recalled the journalist mentioning that the prosecutor in charge of Jang Do-cheol's case held a bribery list. Realizing that Park Hee-soo had it, he quickly agreed to make a deal. Soon, Kwok Sung-gun returned to Hwang Ji-sung's fake company, presenting 300 checks, each worth 1 billion won. He promised that if Hwang Ji-sung could cash the checks, the follow-up deal would reach 270 billion won.
가능하겠습니까?
받아.
가능합니다.
잘 부탁드립니다.
Hwang Ji-sung handed the 300 billion won worth of checks to Park Hee-soo, trading them for the bribery list. However, the list only contained minor players, with no real high-ranking officials. Shocked by Park Hee-soo's greed, Hwang Ji-sung told him that to get the remaining 270 billion won, he would first need to come up with 30 billion won in real cash to complete the deal. That evening, Park Hee-soo went to a high-ranking officials gathering and demanded they give him 300 billion won for urgent use. The elites mocked him, but Park Hee-soo's sudden outburst scared them into cooperating, and they reluctantly pooled together the cash. On the day of the transaction, Hwang Ji-sung personally handed the cash to Kwok Sung-gun, and they agreed to finalize the remaining 270 billion won in checks 3 weeks later. After Hwang Ji-sung successfully completed the task, Park Hee-soo revealed his true colors and tied him up. But just then, Park received a call from his men Kwok Sung-gun, and the money had mysteriously vanished after they followed him to a villa. Worse yet, Park received a threatening call from Jang Do-cheol himself, who demanded to leave Korea with the money, or he'd expose the names on the bribery list. Surprisingly, Park Hee-soo remained calm, unfazed by the threat, thinking it would be the elites who suffered, not him. However, his smug attitude vanished when he heard the voices of his superior and a key official on the other end of the line, ordering him to ensure Jang Do-cheol's safe departure or face the end of his career. Under pressure from the higher-ups, Park pretended to comply. He quickly converted the 3,000 billion won promissory notes on the black market and then threatened Hwang Ji-sung, demanding that he lure Jang Do-cheol to the port on the day of the handoff. After that, Park had Suk-dong throw Hwang Ji-sung into the sea to feed the fish, waiting patiently for Jang Do-cheol to arrive. But at that moment, the black market boss called Park.
싹다 위조구만.
Just then, Suk-dong barged in, announcing that Jang Do-cheol was about to arrive. Park Hee-soo hid behind the door, and as soon as the pair entered, he quickly subdued them. However, when Jang Do-cheol removed his hat, Park was shocked to find that the man beneath it was none other than Hwang Ji-sung. It turned out that everything starting from Lee Kon-suk spreading the bribery list had been an elaborate scam aimed at Park Hee-soo. Hwang Ji-sung had mimicked Jang Do-cheol's voice, used makeup to fool Park's eyes, and even handed him fake promissory notes, leaving Park saddled with massive penalties for breach of contract. Realizing the truth, Park Hee-soo snapped, ready to send Hwang Ji-sung to his death. But suddenly, a gun was pointed at Park's head. It was Suk-dong, revealing that he had been working with Hwang Ji-sung all along. Both men had been victims of Jang Do-cheol's schemes, losing everything and seeking revenge. With everyone seeking justice, Park tried to negotiate, claiming that Hwang Ji-sung's father was killed on orders from the elites to cover their tracks. He promised to bring the corrupt officials to justice if Hwang handed over the evidence. Before Hwang could respond, Chunja appeared, dragging several high-ranking officials into the room. Suddenly, one of the officials, Councilman Sung, fell to his knees, promising to capture Jang Do-cheol and compensate the victims, begging for another chance. But by then, it was too late. A flood of police and reporters stormed in, surrounding them all. Unbeknownst to them, their entire conversation had been captured by hidden cameras and broadcast live. Soon, the scandal spread across the country, and Park Hee-soo, along with the corrupt elites, were brought to justice. Although the revenge was complete, and they had secured 300 billion won from the elites, the true mastermind remained at large. The con artist team regrouped, ready to execute an even bigger scheme.